Hello there.
Hello there.
Why, hello there!
It's been a while. Don't mind me, I've just been busy, having a life, touching grass. No, but in all seriousness, throughout this channel's lifespan, I've slowly been trying to show the kind of person I am in terms of my interests. Of course, I made it clear how much of an otaku loser I am through videos surrounding anime.
Fine, whatever. I'm an otaku. I'm totally weird. I'm a weirdo.
I used to be really into video games before that amounted to mostly gaming with my friends sometimes and uploading that silliness. No! This channel has just become a form of self-expression, which I find to be fun. To change things up a bit, I want to cover one of my favorite fictional characters of all time. That being Spider-Man. Despite my lack of interest in the superhero genre as a whole, one of the only franchises that keeps my attention happens to be the famous wall crawler himself. Whether it stars Peter Parker, regardless of how many times we need to see his origin story,
Responsibility.
Uncle Ben, or the 500 other spider people that are all part of this cluster web. I know it's cliche to say that Spider-Man appeals to me because of the sheer relatability factor, but it's true. I'm always invested in Peter Parker's stories for how it's very easy to empathize with his everyday struggles and his superhero life. Being Spider-Man gives him the ability to make a difference and save lives, but it also stops him from getting a cake for his Aunt May, arriving to school on time. I've consumed my fair share of Spider-Man media from childhood to now. The Raimi movies, Webb movies, Watts movies, seen them all, and I like most of them. Of course, I've watched the Spider-Verse movies, which are too good to even be real, honestly. Outside of his movie adaptations, The Spectacular Spider-Man is one of my favorite shows of all time, and honestly has my favorite version of Peter Parker. The show manages to capture the charisma he has as Spider-Man while also connecting the audience to his personal life struggles, making every aspect of his life feel like it matters.
Oh, you sweet talker, you.
Then there's Ultimate Spider-Man, which makes me wonder how it's possible to even stomach watching that show. I haven't seen too many episodes of the 90s series, but from what I have seen, it's pretty funny, I'm not gonna lie.
The check's in the mail, baby.
Ultimately, what I've grown to find the most appealing about Spider-Man is how versatile the character is. Spider-Man doesn't simply have to be about Peter Parker to be interesting. You can make up just about any kind of character and put them into the role of Spider-Man to tell an interesting story. Sure, we love the Peter Parker stuff for how personal his stories manage to be while not resorting to a mere self-insert, but many other versions of the character prove how different a writer can make the person under the mask through visual style, personality, upbringing, while keeping the core values of their great power coming with great responsibility. Now, even with all of that, one thing I'll admit is the lack of actual comics I've consumed from the character, even though he's a comic book character. The only one I recall reading and enjoying was one with Ben Reilly as the Scarlet Spider. I forget the name of it. Yeah, I was never a big comic book guy growing up. Even now, I find it hard to get into superhero comics with all the different runs and side stories there are, due to different creative voices coming and going over time. Hell, even the main Amazing Spider-Man comic has had multiple main writers giving their take on the Spider Bastard with seemingly varying results.
Oh, god damn it!
That's most likely why consuming manga is in general easier for me. It's usually just one series under one creative voice and assistant staff members. Sure, a manga artist's work ethic is not one to encourage, but at least their vision is shown until the very end, damn it. That being said, reading more Spider-Man comics is something I've been considering lately in order to have more knowledge and appreciation for the character. It doesn't even have to be the Amazing Spider-Man line, honestly any series will do. And I think I found the perfect starting point. Look what I found! Spider-Man Fake Red. It is a manga written and illustrated by Yusuke Osawa, who I've never heard of until now. His most popular work seems to be an original series called Green Worlds. Who is that, Chainsaw Man? Apparently he worked on a manga adaptation of The Mandalorian. That's pretty cool. Might have to give it a read once it gets localized. Anyway, I saw this at a comic book store Jason and I went to. Of course, I was at the manga section. I decided to snag it, and even had a conversation with the person at the register that amounted to, wait, this is a thing? Only for me to find out that this manga was only recently localized, and it happened to be a perfect coincidence on my part. I finished this book the same day I started, since it's only 14 chapters long, and now it's all I'm thinking about. The way I said that makes it sound like I need therapy, fucking Christ.
So, tell me where it all began.
Initially going into this, I expected this manga to be a Peter Parker story, but with its own spin, similar to what the Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man comic run seems to be. While Peter is an integral part of the manga, the story doesn't evolve around him, but rather a high schooler named Yu Onome. His personal life isn't the greatest, as he's failing school and lacks any sense of a social life. However, one day he finds one of Spider-Man's suits, which was thrown away, and coincidentally, Spider-Man has gone missing. With no way to find the real Spider-Man to give the suit back, and no one to save the city, Yu reluctantly takes on the role, learning what it means to be a hero. I'll admit, reading this synopsis led me to believe I was in for a generic anyone can wear the mask kind of story. While that's not too far off from what this manga sets out to accomplish, there are certain aspects that make the story engaging. Yu is an interesting protagonist to me. His life as an outcast is not due to him necessarily being a loser or a victim to bullying, but rather an outcome from how he views himself. In the first chapters explain how he worked hard to get into this high school due to the pressure from his father, but now just has a hard time keeping up with the curriculum. He goes to this rock climbing gym as a way to escape from all the stress from school, but keeps telling himself that he's too much of a loser to ever make friends or be anything of worth. Even though this one guy at the gym notices you working out every morning, complimenting his passion, but also cares enough to tell you not to waste the best years of his life. The most important part of his introduction comes right after, with this scene of a classmate getting picked on and beat up by a group of bullies in an alleyway. Yu happens to be nearby as a witness and contemplates whether he should help him or hide, even thinking of Spider-Man as a sort of guide. In the end, Yu decides to not actively accomplish anything, with his classmate telling him he didn't expect much from him anyway. After finding the Spider-Man suit in the same alleyway and messing around with it a bit on the rooftop, Yu is forced to act as the famous superhero when citizens mistake him for the real Spider-Man, alerting him of a fire. Throughout the book, we see Yu attempt to save lives, stop petty crimes, and even fight actual villains later on. He does all of this simply because he doesn't know who Spider-Man is, hence the trouble of giving the suit back, and no one else can. All without having any powers or special skills, and that's what makes this simple story fun to read. Yu always doubts himself, always compares his weak ass to the actual Spider-Man. Time and time again, when the situation is dire, he says to himself that someone much better should be able to handle it. Yu is no superhero, he's just an imposter that has no idea what he's doing, yet he takes the leap anyway to do what he feels is right. Having this suit gives him a moral obligation to do these big things in spite of his own feelings about himself, which is ultimately what's at stake here. Not choice, responsibility. The fact that the book never gives you any powers from the beginning to end is so refreshing, especially coming from something like the Marvel Spider-Man cartoon on Disney XD, which also tries to do the whole anyone can be a hero thing, but makes almost every character in that show a super genius that can build Stark level tech or give him powers. Or both. Even making Peter look incompetent at his job. You can't just show other characters chiming in to help by giving them some unique ability, only making that unique ability apply to everyone, rendering Spider-Man pointless and prohibit anyone from standing out for their own ideals and convictions. It not only rips away any form of identity for those characters, but takes away any satisfaction from seeing more ordinary people compared to Spider-Man make a difference without needing to be extraordinary.
Herman Schultz, aka Shocker, is a kid genius who applies for this school and sort of gets in over his head.
She's smart, intellectual, she knows everything.
Gwen Stacy, my character, is a student at high school with Peter Parker, and she's fucking stupid!
We get to see Yu in different scenarios, such as saving a little boy from a fire, chasing down criminals in a car to stop a hostage. Hell, he even has a fight with Screwball, and while she's still her typical internet personality self who commits crimes for viewership, she is nowhere near annoying in this manga as she was in the PS4 game.
Oh my god, Spider-Man! I can't thank you enough for the millions of clicks I just got! Wow!
The action has a different kind of energy from other Spider-Man media, since Yu reacts like a normal person would acting as Spider-Man. He attempts swinging but has a difficult time from lack of super strength, has a hard time stopping a car and climbing into a burning building for the same reason. And yet, he saved that kid, he saved the girl he likes, who we'll get to later, and stopped Screwball from potentially activating a bomb, only to find out she just said that for stakes and views in an admittedly funny panel. All of this in the limited ways that he could, like blocking the windshield with the web shooters to make the crooks crash, and managing to swing close enough to Screwball for an all-or-nothing effort of stopping her flying contraption. We see the toll it takes on him physically too, his limbs being very sore from these physically challenging feats. I mean, okay, if we were being 100% realistic here, Yu's whole body would be dismantled from the shit he pulled. But it's a Spider-Man story, from Japan no less. Realism isn't accountable for the most part.
It's right.
Anyway, this all builds up to Yu's fight with Venom. Sure, he managed to take on someone like Screwball, but she's nothing compared to Venom, who can devour and chew you up in seconds. He has the chance to run, even being encouraged to do so by Silk, who's a character I know nothing about, honestly. She partners with Peter regularly in this book, which is interesting. Finally, without hesitation, Yu tries to at least pull off a distraction to let everybody run to safety. After finding out there's a man being used as a host for the symbiote, he figures out sound waves are the way to defeat it, and once again with no hesitation, manages to defeat the symbiote and save the man inside it. He may regret not making a difference for his classmate, but wearing the suit has given him the self-confidence he truly needed. I'll admit, personality-wise, Yu is less of his own three-dimensional character and more of an everyman the reader can put themselves in, though I kind of feel like this was done on purpose. He lacks a lot of charisma most interpretations of Spider-Man usually have, which might make him boring for a lot of fans. I think his character works for me, not only because of his growth I talked about earlier, but he does have concrete personality traits that are very consistent throughout this character-driven story. He's a nice enough dude, but looks down on himself all the time, which leads him to not have any friends or anything to show for himself, really. Yu does want to be something much greater though, and looks up to Spider-Man as an example, hence why he goes to a rock climbing gym of all things, but unfortunately lacks the assertiveness to do so, at least until he puts on that suit and manages to prove to himself what he's capable of. With how short this story is, Osawa manages to use every page he could to help the reader easily connect with him. With that being said, as much as I praise his introduction for setting up Yu's character arc, I wish it was paced a lot better. We only get 5 pages of seeing his personal life before the moment with his classmate getting bullied. I feel like an extra moment beforehand of seeing Yu trying to make friends in his school would have helped things. Like he attempts to make small talk with a group, but fails due to his own lack of self-assurance and not because of him being an actual unlikable person. I think it really would have added a huge sympathetic factor to his character to get the audience connecting to him outside of the everyman element. With that being said, the pacing of this manga does become slower after the first chapter. We get to see his personal life shine a little more and follow him interacting with other characters. I just would have liked a more appealing first impression, as those are everything. Speaking of other characters, let's talk about a very integral one. This is Emma Pearson, a girl that Yu meets at the gym. He notices her for how talented she is at climbing and feels like she's the kind of person he should be. He also happens to, have a little crush on her. She actually does try talking to him, Yu handling it the way you'd expect. Later on, she gets involved with the car chase I mentioned previously, since these assholes stole her ride. Spider-Man of course saves her, but she notices his arm bleeding, and when she confronts Yu again, she notices the bandages on his arm, putting it all together. Okay, so I'm not gonna lie, Emma might be my favorite character in the book. Her interactions with Yu show off the fun personality she has. For one, I like that she's not an idiot. It took her the amount of time it should have for her to figure out Spider-Man's supposed identity. The funniest moment from the book has her leading Yu to believe she'll give out his secret unless he does exactly what she says, only to be like, yeah, I'm just screwing with you, you saved me, so I just want to fix your costume. She kinda gives off Mary Jane vibes, which consist of her stealing the show each time she's present. The kind of person you want as your best friend. What makes Emma stand out on her own though is while she has a more outgoing persona compared to Yu, we later see how much of herself she's hiding from others. See, after the whole identity thing is revealed to her, Emma and Yu slowly become friends, with her helping him study to get his grades up. Not too long after, friends of hers invite her to hang out, and there's a small moment of Yu accepting her ditching him and being a loner again. Only for her to make it clear she values him and likes being around him without needing to explicitly say it. Thus he joins in on the fun. After watching Yu's fight with Screwball from one of Screwball's live streams, Emma and him hang out at the gym and acknowledges Yu's bravery for running into danger the way he did. She makes a comment about herself stating if she was brave as he was, she'd be able to be more true to herself. This results in a conversation between the two where she reveals that she is in love with her friend Sarah, making her gay. Sure, bouldering has kept her busy, provided her success socially, and led her to believe she's cool, but she's still running from this major side of her and not being honest about her feelings. But seeing Yu take on these huge challenges in the field has filled her with the courage she needed to open up to him, and even consider actually admitting her feelings to Sarah, asking Yu if he still accepts her as his best friend. Yu, with no hesitation, declares that he does. If you ask me I expected a coming out moment from a character in this manga, I would have said you were out of your goddamn mind. I appreciate that Yu's reaction to a reveal like this is more on the positive side, but keeps the shock value since it's not something to take lightly, of course. The best part about this is when he reflects on it, Yu focuses less on the fact that he will never be able to date her, but more on the fact that she trusted him enough to open up to him and that he can call her his best friend. It's so cute, dude. While I would have liked a moment of Emma and Sarah actually interacting before this reveal, since I won't lie, I had to turn back some pages to remember who Sarah even was, Emma is still a very good character. She not only enhances Yu's character by making her bond with him feel like it matters so much to his growth as a person, but manages to still have some depth underneath the outgoing persona she presents herself with. Sure, their friendship grows quickly, and her character isn't explored as much as I would have liked, to be honest, but throughout her dialogue with Yu feels very natural and true to their characters, which really makes a difference. Their friendship manages to be believable, because we see how it changes both of them for the better. Okay, so I don't have too much to say on most of the other characters in this book. Like I said, Silk appears in this, finding out about Yu using the actual Spider-Man's costume, but puts the imposter syndrome aside and acknowledges his bravery, forming a bit of trust between the two. Not much to say on the villains either. I've already touched on Screwball, and there's a fight with Scorpion who isn't that important in the grand scheme of things. But speaking of that fight, let's cover one of the two villains that are legitimately relevant in this story. Venom. Or rather, Peter Parker.
Peter Parker! P is in phosphorus, E is in electron.
While this manga mostly follows Yu, Osawa made sure to still make Peter a very crucial part of this book, and manages to get the core of Peter Parker so right. There are 2 chapters dedicated to getting the reader acquainted with Peter, which take place before Yu found his suit. Although, I'll get this out of the way, the transition to this feedback is kinda clunky in my opinion. I like the transition from Yu deep in thought, putting Spider-Man on a pedestal in comparison to himself, to showing where the real Spider-Man disappeared to. But right after, we got a panel of Spider-Man swinging around, and I had to take a moment and realize we were in a flashback. The paneling in general is really solid in this manga in terms of clarification and action set pieces, but this was a moment where I needed more clarity. Maybe make the background behind the panels black to indicate a flashback like what Oda does with One Piece. This might only be a me thing though, it's mostly nitpicking honestly. Anyway, these 2 chapters cover Peter rushing to attend MJ's play performance. But of course on the way he helps people in trouble and encounters Scorpion making trouble at an inconvenient time. I appreciate how Peter is presented as always being there for the little guy, interacting with citizens to ease the tension from their situation and his own anxiety. This is what separates Peter not only from other superheroes but even other interpretations of Spider-Man as well. Not to say Spider-Man doesn't do cool stuff outside of street level threats, he most certainly does. But it's nice to get a Peter Parker who's more grounded, especially after the recent MCU stuff. Dude even stopped swinging just to get MJ flowers, it's cute. His fight with Scorpion makes him late for MJ's play, along with Peter's flowers getting destroyed in the beginning of their brawl. Dude even gets blocked by her the moment he gets to the theater. He returns home to 3 voice messages left by Jameson screaming for Peter to take photos of Spider-Man and Scorpion, and the last message has Peter getting fired. Classic Jameson. Fired. As if things couldn't get any worse, his Aunt May tells him they would not be able to afford the house they're currently living in and need to move somewhere cheaper, harking Peter back to the good times he, his Aunt May, and Uncle Ben had in this house. This right here might be my favorite page in this manga. If this line didn't already sell how Peter's feeling, it's how he's drawn that sells his entire character here. Peter clearly knows how much good being Spider-Man does, but it hurts his personal life so much and is not able to be there for the ones he cares about as much as he wants to.
I never asked to be Spider-Man. I never asked for these powers. I never knew it would mean a bashed up hand, no job, and friends who all think I'm scum.
Hell, even MJ's reaction to Peter being late despite knowing he's Spider-Man is pretty understandable here. The two have most likely been dating for a long while now, and having a boyfriend that has a superhero life getting in the way of their relationship is not the easiest to deal with. She does eventually go to visit Aunt May to try and patch things up after he's gone missing, showing she does still obviously care about him. This interpretation of Peter honestly reminds me so much of Insomniac Spider-Man in the sense that he's trying his best to keep a smile on his face and take on the responsibility of being a hero, but is clearly so tired and exhausted from it all. Just seeing him look at his mask, his eyes and smile disagreeing with him while saying this line is honestly heartbreaking. During the climax of Venom attacking the city, Yu recognizes the person inside the symbiote to be Peter. A few times we see Peter in the sewer after the whole MJ incident, in which I assume he was captured? I'll touch on that more later. He's been struggling to not let the symbiote take over, simply repeating his Uncle Ben's famous words. This classic line that has been used constantly manages to be very effective in this story, with Silk explaining to Yu how Spider-Man is able to carry on his duties as a hero while also being a clue to track him down without revealing his identity. With the way the drawings are framed, you can tell that Yu feels the weight of all that despite him not completely understanding this motto. I also find this really cool since in Spectacular Spider-Man, the way Peter manages to fight off the symbiote from completely taking over is reliving his origin in his own mind, with Ben acting as a more positive influence in comparison to the symbiote. So seeing Peter attempting to fight it off with Ben's words in this book is a nice touch. Peter is saved thanks to you reminding him of who he is in these amazing panels. This results in a fight with Mysterio and his illusions, who was responsible for getting Peter to bond with Venom. Spidey wins, of course, with a bit of help from you, and the world now knows about the imposter situation. Afterwards, you and Peter sit on a rooftop, and this moment not only concludes Yu's character arc very nicely, but makes me appreciate Peter Parker's core more than I already did. Yu apologizes for putting on Peter's suit and seemingly making a mess of things, expressing he only did what he thought was right but wasn't good enough. However, Peter counters this by expressing how doubtful he can be of himself as well. Living up to his motto is not an easy task, comes with sacrifices, and always questions whether he's capable of continuing on as a beacon of hope in exchange for his own life. At one point pushing him enough to just throw the towel. But at the end of the day, he realizes, powers or not, he can't run from himself. He takes off his mask, revealing his identity, expressing his gratitude towards Yu's efforts and assuring him to not regret any decision he made while in costume. Peter isn't a perfect figure like Yu made him out to be, but is a regular person just like him. This experience helped Yu grow to trust himself enough to affect others positively, while also helping Peter remember what being Spider-Man truly means. Fake Red wraps up the story for the main characters very nicely. Even with Yu's actions being revealed to the world, he still has Emma who values him whether superhero or not. Peter and Silk watch over them, assuring themselves Yu will be just fine, and they swing off, leaving Yu to live out his life with a much better understanding of himself. If I had to comment on anything else I hadn't previously, I must praise how amazing the art in this book is. The action manages to be very dynamic, and the character designs are extremely clean and expressive. There are many pages that just wowed me from their visuals alone, especially the ones that are fully colored. It's impressive stuff. The art manages to distinct this book as a manga while also still keeping the Marvel comic book aesthetic. Oh yeah, I also really like the Spider-Man suit too. It's your typical classic suit, but includes consistent details like the web cartridges resting on Peter's hips, along with the addition of the white spider logo reminiscent of the PS4 game, but wraps around from front to back. Wish the actual spider was much bigger though. Also, MJ has a peak character design. One final major critique I have with Fake Red is Mysterio as the final villain. First off, his design is the only one I'm not a fan of, honestly. Where is this man's fishbowl? That's like the most iconic thing about him. Second, his reveal and contribution to the story just feels so rushed. A few times in the book, he's seen in the shadows watching Peter being taken over by the symbiote. When he's fully revealed to the reader, his motivation is explained by him, saying how he used to be a stuntman and he was always second fiddle to the actual stars in spite of his passion for film. That passion turned into bitterness, which led him to want Spider-Man dead so he can be the star he always wanted to be. Problem is, this backstory is shown right after his actual introduction, and it's glossed through so quickly that I found it hard to care. We don't even see his aftermath after being defeated. This panel is his last appearance. His presence is treated like a big deal even though we don't know much about him, and he has no personal connection to Peter or Yu in this specific story. Nor does he really challenge their ideals and convictions in the slightest. Also, Mysterio is shown to have a board filled with pictures of Peter and his loved ones. So wait, he knows Peter's identity? How does he know Peter's identity? I swear I checked back and couldn't find an answer to this. Did I miss something? However, I still enjoyed reading Spider-Man Fake Red. Osawa clearly knows what makes Spider-Man appeal to so many people and injects a lot of heart and soul in the story. He nailed the core themes of the character while adding little details that make Spider-Man very easy to connect with. Dude's a fan of the Raimi films too, so he has good taste. Unfortunately though, this manga joined many other interpretations of Spider-Man in meeting the fate of cancellation. Osawa apparently had many other stories to tell in this universe as long as this series was able to keep going, but we'll most likely never get to see them. Apparently the manga didn't sell well enough in Japan and just barely managed to get localized overseas, 3 years after ending serialization. Judging by the lack of physical copies in many stores I've gone to recently, I'm not sure if it's doing too well over here either. It's a shame honestly, because pacing issues aside, especially with the introduction and Mysterio, this manga was an extremely pleasant surprise. I would have loved to see what Osawa had in store for more stories featuring the webhead. Maybe we would have gotten his take on a Peter Parker story, or who knows, maybe you would have actually gained spider powers, thus ruining the ending. But instead of trying to figure out why a good thing had to end so abruptly, I'm gonna appreciate what we got. Hell, us Spider-Man fans are used to trying to do that anyway. Thank you for watching, and I'm gonna study up some Spider-Man comics. Uncle Ben. He was loved.